Our enemies seek not only to destroy us, they seek to destroy our common civilization and return all of us to a dark age of tyranny and terror.
On Monday, Israel, the free world, will mark 1 year since Hamas's October 7th massacre that claimed the lives of more than 1,200 Israelis and sparked a war that is widening in the Middle East. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very clear about there being no place Iran and its proxies can hide from the IDF. So what has Israel accomplished in the last year, and how close are they to accomplishing their goals of finally eliminating Hamas and other threats to the Jewish state? Joining me now to discuss is retired Brigadier General from Israel's Defense Forces and founder and director of Israel's Defense and Security Forum, Amir Avivi. Also with us, the founder and editor-in-chief of All Israel News, Joel Rosenberg. He's also the author of The Libyan Diversion. General Avivi, I'd like to begin with you. How do you assess the results of the last year of Israeli military operations?
Well, we started with a big crisis, and we're moving to a huge victory. We started with 1,200 people massacred, burned alive, decapitated, with hostages. And after a year, we have dismantled Hamas as a military entity. Today, Hamas cannot pose a serious threat to Israel. We still have a lot to do. We have to release the hostages and dismantle Hamas also as a governmental entity. But we're moving towards the right direction. In 1 week, we managed to topple almost all of Hezbollah's leadership, including Nasrallah, destroy their main headquarters, and launch a ground incursion that in a few weeks will restore security in South Lebanon to Israelis and will enable us to bring back safely our 60 Israelis who have been displaced in the last 11 months. And now Israel is ready and preparing for the next stage, which is dealing with Iran and this possible nuclear threat in the future. We need to dismantle the nuclear capabilities. And this is something Israel shouldn't do alone. This requires American leadership, requires a coalition that will fight alongside with Israel to really deal with this imminent threat of Iran, terrorizing the whole Middle East and posing a global threat to all Western society.
I want to talk about that in just a second, but I want to go to Joel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has held together this very complicated, tenuous domestic political coalition over the last year to prosecute this war. He has, as the general referenced, under a lot of pressure from Washington, demonstrated a tremendous amount of resolve here. How do people in Israel feel about the war effort overall 1 year on, particularly given some of the successes, particularly given the recent escalation against Hezbollah?
Tom, it's a great question, and I would say that leadership matters. It was a complete catastrophic failure on October 7th. Prime Minister Netanyahu and all of his security colleagues in the upper echelons of the Israeli security and intelligence establishment didn't see this coming from Hamas. And of course, there was outrage and shock and grief, and that's why Netanyahu's poll numbers dropped to his lowest levels in his history, and he's the longest serving prime minister in the history of Israel. But what we're watching in recent weeks is true leadership. I'm not saying that will necessarily help him in the next round of elections, but let's be clear. The president of the United States told him not to go into Rafah, and Netanyahu went into Rafah. President Biden said that would be a catastrophe, and it wasn't. Biden told Netanyahu to take a 21-day ceasefire against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Instead, Netanyahu went for the kill shot, went for the jugular, and as the general just mentioned, took out 18 of the top, most senior, most experienced leaders. And then he took out Nasrallah. And now I think we're ready for, I think Netanyahu is preparing for the biggest attack on Iran ever. And I think Israelis are unified left to right on that. But Biden is telling them don't do it. So this is the test next.
I want to get to that point now, General Avivi. The efforts of the IDF, as I mentioned commentary earlier read like something out of a Tom Cruise or a James Bond film. I mean, they really have really tried to redeem themselves from an intelligence and operational standpoint from the failure of October 7th. Washington has taken a very different approach. What do your sources tell you about the relationship between Israel and the Biden-Harris administration at this point, as Israel is preparing to retaliate against Iran?
Well, Israel has a very close relation with CENTCOM, with the military forces. Netanyahu has an open line with President Biden. But it's important to understand that Israel needs to do what's best for Israel. We're fighting an existential threat. We need to win decisively. We are not looking at ceasefires. We don't want ceasefires. We want to win. We need to restore security for our citizens. And we need to make sure that Iran will never, ever be nuclear. And I think this is a common goal with the U.S. And when I met with one of the U.S. officials, as I was going into his office, was talking about ceasefires, I reminded him that the emblem of, the U.S. is an eagle holding arrows. And the U.S. needs to go back to be eagles, not doves.
Joel,
the U.S. needs to lead the world, needs to show leadership, needs to stabilize the world. If the U.S. is not going to do that, at the end of the day, we'll see deterioration all over the globe, whether it's China, whether it's Russia's aggression in Europe, North Africa, South America. It's all over the place.
Well,
and
General,
here, Israel is giving really the U.S. the opportunity to join and really enjoy a huge victory. Israel is going to win anyway.
General, I think that we're seeing that level of chaos all around the world from the U.S. Pulling back from its leadership role. Joel, very quickly for me, do you think that the Israeli people are going to would be supportive of a strike against Iran nuclear facilities in retaliation for not only this attack, but everything else that the Iranians have done to Israel over the years?
Tom, we would say in Hebrew, 100%. This is the moment. I think Netanyahu is ready. He's been ready for 12 years. He wanted to do this, but the whole system is unified. And I'll tell you, Biden will not help us. Okay, so Harris will not help us. And so this is the moment to strike. And I believe 6 months from now, maybe less, Israel will be the dominant superpower in the Middle East. We will have gone from our lowest moment in modern history to the greatest moment of peace and security. And the Saudis will make peace with us. The Indonesians will make peace with us. The Lebanese might rise up and overthrow the rest of Hezbollah, and they may want to deal a peace treaty with Israel too. This is a huge moment, but it's a test for Netanyahu. He's not going to get help from Washington, so he's got to go it alone, but he should, and all Israelis are with him.
Retired IDF Brigadier General Amir Avivi and the editor-in-chief of All Israel News, Joel Rosenberg. Thank you both for your perspective. We appreciate it.
It's an honor.
Thank you very much.